Sir David Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland if he will make a statement on the coroner's ruling in the Clono inquest.
Secretary of State.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On the 16th of February 1992, a heavily armed unit of the Provisional IRA carried out an attack on Coal Island Police Station armed with a 12.7mm heavy machine gun and 3 AKM rifles. Approximately 60 rounds were fired, but thankfully no one was injured. Following the attack, the IRA unit proceeded to a car park where they were engaged by soldiers of the Army's Specialist Military Unit. This resulted in 4 men, Patrick Vincent, Sean O'Farrell, Peter Paul Clancy and Kevin O'Donnell, being shot and killed by the soldiers. On the 6th of February, Mr. Justice Humphreys, sitting as a coroner in the inquest into the circumstances of those deaths at Clonoe Chapel, found that the use of lethal force by the soldiers was unjustified and that the operation, and I quote, was not planned and controlled in such a way as to minimise, to the greatest extent possible, the need for recourse to lethal force. The coroner further found that the soldiers did not hold an, and I quote, honest and genuinely held belief, end of quote, that the use of force was necessary to defend themselves or others. These are clearly, Mr. Speaker, very significant matters which require careful consideration. I know that the Ministry of Defence is considering the coroner's findings. Therefore, there is, unfortunately, a limit to what I am able to say in relation to the verdict, the findings themselves, particularly given that there is also an ongoing civil case relating to these events. However, it is clear that the government must take such findings very seriously. We owe a great debt to our armed forces. The vast majority.
There is no sub judice to that case on what you've just mentioned, and we must be clear on that. So please, let us not try and use that as a barrier. I just want to be very clear on that.
I accept that, of course, entirely, Mr. Speaker. I was merely pointing out, as I think your statement alluded to, there is an ongoing civil case. We owe a great debt to our armed forces. The vast majority of those who served in Operation Banner during the Troubles did so with distinction. They operated in the most dangerous and difficult circumstances in order to protect the citizens of the United Kingdom. During the Troubles, over 1,000 members of the security forces lost their lives in that endeavour. It is right that we hold our armed forces to the highest standards. We must also recognise the extreme circumstances they faced. That is what sets them apart from the terrorist organisations who indiscriminately murdered over 3,000 people during the Troubles.
Sir David Davis.
Thank the Secretary of State for taking this personally. I know he doesn't have to, and so thank you for that. The government gave notice at the election that they intend to remove the element of Northern Ireland Legacy Act that protects soldiers and police who served during the Troubles from prosecution. Last week's frankly speculative judgment from the Northern Ireland coroner into the Clono shootings now exposes a number of soldiers to potential prosecution. These are men who served their country with honour, heroism and skill, and sometimes in the face of the most incredible danger. They are now mostly in their 60s and 70s, no doubt hoping for a well-earned, peaceful retirement. In his statement in December, the Secretary of State spoke of, and I quote, recognising the dedicated service of the vast majority of police officers, members of the armed forces and the security services who did so much to keep the people of Northern Ireland safe during the Troubles. So precisely what is the government going to do to stop the vengeful pursuit of decent, patriotic people? If the government leaves them open to persecution, it will be frankly shameful and only serve to further the IRA's attempt to rewrite the history of Northern Ireland.
Well, I am grateful to the right honourable gentleman for having asked his question today. As he will be aware, this particular inquest was part of the 5-year plan established by the former Lord Chief Justice, and because the hearings were held prior to the Legacy Act 1st of May cut-off, the inquest was able to be concluded. It is not, just for the avoidance of doubt, it's not the result of anything that this government has done. The government set out in our election manifesto, in the King's speech, our commitment to repeal and replace the Legacy Act, because it did something quite remarkable. It united the political parties and communities in Northern Ireland in opposition to it. It was a fatally flawed piece of legislation that has been found in a number of respects to be incompatible with our obligations under the European Convention on Human Rights. Well, this government believes in upholding our commitment to the European Convention on Human Rights, even if other members do not share that view. I set out in my statement to the House of Commons in December the approach that we are taking, and I will bring forward further proposals in due course. But I echo what the right honourable gentleman has said about the service of our armed forces, the police, the security services, during those terribly dark and difficult and bloody days of the Troubles.